¿Qué tal? I'm Antonio Tijerino, host of the Fritanga podcast by the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, where we blend the many ingredients of our community, perspectives, experiences, and ideas to foster inspiration, opportunity, comfort, understanding, connection, and action. Last year, we had compelling pláticas with Latina leaders making an impact across so many areas of life. Today, as a special episode, and the perfect episode to kick off the new year, we're spotlighting a remarkable visionary and trailblazer in the world of sports. Marissa Solis, Senior Vice President of Global Brand and Consumer Marketing at the NFL. Marissa brings over 25 years of marketing, communications, and sales experience, spanning Procter & Gamble, Deloitte, and PepsiCo, all the way to helping shape the marketing strategy of one of the most iconic brands in America.
The National Football League.
The NFL.
Inside the NFL.
She's a proud immigrant from Mexico and someone deeply committed to using football as a platform for growth and inclusion. With the precision and discipline of a martial arts master, which she is, Marissa is breaking through barriers and paving the way for the next generation. In this episode, we will discuss her bold vision to future-proof the NFL, ensuring that more diverse and younger fans see themselves in the game, both here and abroad. We'll also explore her passion for uplifting our Latino community through initiatives like the annual NFL Latino Youth Honors, a program in partnership with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation that celebrates outstanding Latino high school tackle and flag football players who excel not only in the field, but in the classroom and in their communities. Next month, these amazing finalists will be honored in New Orleans during Super Bowl 59 week, after which they'll receive educational grants and join our Latinos on Fast Track or LOFT network, where they will participate in mentorship, professional development opportunities, and programs designed to inspire, prepare, and connect them for their future careers and personal development. So let's dive into Marissa's inspiring and energizing story and hear how she's bridging cultural, generational, and digital divides to keep fans engaged year-round while representing Latina leadership in boardrooms and beyond, well into our communities. So now, let's fritanga with Marissa Solis. So, Marissa, so great to have you on the Fritanga podcast, and across your remarkable career, including what you're doing at the NFL, you've demonstrated vision and brilliance, but also a lot of toughness. And you're even tougher than I thought, because I just found out that you are a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo. Can you talk about that? I mean, you put the lucha in luchadora.
I'm so excited to be here. Antonio, I admire you. You are such a great leader in our community and such a great friend. So this is incredible. I do have a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo. It was kind of by accident. My daughter wanted to join Taekwondo, and when I went to take her, the sensei of the dojo was like, hey, we have an adult class. Would you like to join? And kind of said, sure. I thought I would last, 2 weeks. And sure enough, like 10 years later, had a third degree. My daughter quit, by the way. And I just kept going. It's an awesome way to keep discipline and strength, but also there's a lot of spirituality to it too.
Yeah.
I mean, martial arts is just a great way to keep centered and, practice some healthy lifestyle too.
Well, I hope the NFL players and executives know who they're dealing with. But it's funny because it's not just about toughness. It's also about the visionary part of you is one of the things that I really admire about you. You've talked about how part of what you see your role to be is to future-proof the NFL, I think was the quote that you had. That's a huge endeavor considering you took over the biggest brand in America. So what's the plan, hermana?
No, absolutely. I mean, look, the currency of the league, unlike, a PepsiCo per se, where you're selling food and beverage, right? Really, the currency of the league is relevance. We are not a platform if we're not relevant to our audience. And when you think about what that means for the future, right, and being relevant to the future generations, you absolutely have to see what's happening in our country, right? And the shift in demographics and who you're trying to get to engage with you. And when I came on board and you looked at the math, just the simple math of who the main audiences and main fan base of the NFL was, it was primarily middle America, very homogenous, very much 50 plus in terms of age, right? So you looked at that as your core audience, and then you looked at where demographics were going, and quite frankly already were, right? Large, diverse fan base coming from not just segments of the population like Latinos, African American, Asian, but truly intersectional. So a lot of diversity, but intersectionality. You looked at, the age groups of, who is driving the cultural conversation in our country, right? Gen Z, Generation Alpha, like these young people that are engaging in media in a very, very different way. If we didn't capture all of these changes, and what we call growth audiences, gosh, 3, 4, 5 years from now, the league would be irrelevant. And there goes our entire currency, right? So it really is a business strategy in terms of keeping the league as relevant as possible, talking to as many people as we can where they are, right? Shifting how we engage truly to where the media landscape is going. So yes, it's about demographics and reaching what we call growth audiences, right? And our primary growth audiences, women, Latinos, young, Gen Z, Gen A. Those are our primary growth audiences. And then, again, reaching them where they are. They're not always going to be watching, 4-hour games. We have to be, engaging them in social media, engaging them through other platforms like streaming, gaming, engaging them in their everyday and in their culture. And so that was part of what really started the strategy to what I call future-proof the league.
You gave me things that I hadn't really thought of that now when I'm thinking about them, I am gathering my information through streaming, through the reels that you all do. And of course, you have your own network as well, which covers the NFL year round. And I think that was a big thing too. Or even just doing the draft and making that its own spectacle. That was tremendous. I can't even tell my audience the energy around that draft in Detroit this year.
And I like to say we don't have an off season, right? People always tell me, oh, you're busy during the season. What about the off season? There really is no off season to the league. We measure, it's really interesting. There is a metric in terms of word of mouth conversations about the league. In any given year, there's over 12.5 billion word of mouth conversations about the league. And yes, during season, you're talking about the games and what's happening on the field. But even in the off season, as soon as Super Bowl's over, the owners get together in March for the annual meeting where a lot of different things happen and decisions that impact the game. There's the free agent season where who's going to go to what team. There is the, what franchises are building stadiums in what cities. There's so much. And right after that March league meeting, there's combine, right? You're starting to see the future class of NFL players coming in. Then we have draft. Then you've got the Hall of Fame game. You've got so many things in the off season. Now we have, last year for the first time in July, we did the NFL Flag Championships that aired on ESPN, ABC. It was sponsored by Toyota. And that was another massive tentpole in July before the season started. So again, if you look at really all year round, the NFL is alive and well, and people are having conversations and people are engaging in the product, right? And in the sport of football and in all of the different verticals that surround it.
Adding the part about flag football to expand the base, not just what people are watching, but participating, was brilliant as well. And I watched those games.
And anybody knows, participation is a key part of engagement and fandom. And you build a fan base by people participating in the game and participating in the sport. And I think flag football allows everybody to participate, right? It doesn't have any barriers or boundaries as it relates to ability levels and gender and ethnicity. And, it's a relatively inexpensive game in terms of the equipment that you need and the things that you need to play it. I will say, in terms of ability, it does take, it does take massive skill, but it's a skill that can be learned, right, by many people. And I think it is such an inclusive game, and that's why it's gaining so much incredible momentum here in the States and all over the world.
Yeah, and my son played flag football, and he doesn't necessarily like organized sports, but he played flag football. It was a way for him to bond with the other players, and it was also a way for him to learn about being coached. And he's a musician, but flag football was an outlet for him that he didn't have to be a superstar. He could go out on the field and participate, like you said, when he was little, and that built like a framework for him that he needs for everything else he does, including in music or whatever he wants to go into. So it taught him a lot of life lessons. And as parents, we want him to have that experience. So I just want to thank you for the flag football. But also, can you talk about the international vision for the game? I mean, you've had games in Mexico, in Germany. I think you just had Brazil, and I know in England.
Yeah.
Talk about that expansion.
Yes, international expansion is a huge goal. I think if you follow the league and particularly Roger Goodell, he's mentioned so many times, our desire to truly be a global sport and a global platform. And what that means for us is that we are in the top 3 sports of every country, right? And that's going to take some time. Yeah. We're definitely not there yet, but I think we are starting and off the gate pretty quickly. We played 5 international games this year, 3 in London, 1 in Brazil, 1 in Germany. Next year, that's going to move up to 8 games. So we're adding Mexico's coming back. We're adding Spain as well. And we just announced really the vision is for, in the very near future, for the league to play up to 16 games internationally. And that means that every team would play at least 1 international game in every season. And the important thing is these aren't exhibition games, right? These are real league games that count and that matter. And we love taking them internationally because it brings, it brings that passion to the fan in that country so that they can see it firsthand and truly experience it.
Football diplomacy as well. I mean, this is bigger than just the sport part of it. I actually was at the ambassador of Spain's residence last night in honor of my friend Estuardo Rodriguez, who is getting this award. Yes. And that would be great to host a viewing event when that happens in Spain, along with...
It'll be next year, in Madrid.
Yeah, that's amazing. So here's my question as somebody that has a marketing background. What marketing efforts influenced you or have you admired? Yeah, I remember the NBA when they were going to audiences beyond the U.S., but what are those other brand efforts besides what you did at PepsiCo, which was amazing, that you've admired?
Yeah, I think that I look at big, massive, iconic brands, right, and how they've been able to really inspire people and create movements, right? And there are many brands that do that. But, I was just talking the other day about the travel industry and, Marriott, who's one of our big partners. And I remember the day when Marriott and Starwood came together and created this massive platform of travel, and they put it all on that Bomboy app. And they essentially brought travel planning to your fingertips. And so that's the kind of thing I admire, where you have a big solution and it's digital and it's seamless. When Uber first came out, I think the power of an Uber and what it does in terms of service and connecting people. I think that's incredible, right? But then you have, so some of it is around services and meeting kind of unmet needs in a new and different way. But then there's other brands that inspire me in terms of their storytelling and just what incredible storytellers they are. I mean, I think about every McDonald's commercial that I've ever seen, and I think they do an incredible job of lifting up their local communities, telling stories about those local communities, right? Whether it's their own employees and what it means to get a college degree, right? They have this incredible college program where they give scholarships, but they tell the story of, the attendant that's at the drive-through, and all of a sudden he realizes he can go to college, and it's just so great. So I love that kind of storytelling. I look at brands that have done a lot of things in the space of, cause and purpose and the things that they are doing in the community, and to me, the ultimate is Patagonia and some of the things that they've been able to do in the name of protecting the environment. And so there's just, to me, so many different ways that brands can have an impact, and an impact for good, right? Again, meeting needs, servicing communities, making a better future for all of us. That's what I admire. And so when I do things at the league, I take ideas from all these different brands and bring them in, and do them in our own special way, right? We have our own special way of doing things, but always remembering that at the end of the day, impact and human connection, those are the things that matter in terms of marketing and advertising.
And you've done that. Like I said, with that Flores ad, I can't even tell you everyone that was sitting around my house watching the game, and they all just completely were like, what is this? There was such energy around it, and you felt that impact. And you've talked about how the NFL's greatest brand asset is a helmets off approach, and you're talking about that storytelling that you've admired. So giving fans more access to players in those stories that you said, and the cross-border pride of highlighting players like Isaiah Pacheco or Cairo Santos and Will Hernandez, and we have Rodriguez on the Washington football team. So reconnecting with those cultural roots. So accessing these players and highlighting their stories, I think you've been able to do that. And staying on the importance of storytelling to reach different audiences in a meaningful way. The NFL has partnered with HHF, Hispanic Heritage Foundation, for many years. But I have to say, it's been different since you took over. And we've worked with you and Javier and the team to develop the Latino Youth Honors. You wanted to tell those stories. You took us in a different direction. We had partnered for years before. But for the audience listening, together we've been able to identify, select, and celebrate Latino high school tackle and flag football players for their achievements, not just on the field, but also in the classroom and in the community. And shout out Lou, Lori, Brad, Ramon, and the nationwide team for your support on this partnership. But it really has been your vision that we followed for this program, which changed how we were doing it before. So those elements you've added, talk about why you took our relationship in this direction.
Yeah, I mean, you're not giving yourself enough credit, Antonio, because the things that you do with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation to lift up our community are critical, right? And I remember coming in and saying, my goodness, we have this incredible partnership with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. What can we do to elevate it and truly show, right, to everybody, not just the Latino community, but to everybody, the impact that you can make. And, one thing is to partner and, yes, give scholarships and do all these things. But if you do not show the impact, it's hard for people to really see it and be part of it and engage in it, right? And all I wanted to do was really be able to show what hasn't been seen. And for many times, I think one of my biggest passions and ambitions is to make our community the protagonist. Like, we are, this Latino community is resilient, it's strong, it impacts our community and our broader community in so many different ways, and yet nobody really knows, right? And all they hear often is the negative side of the community, and you hear it in the circles. And so all I've ever wanted to do is really uplift the positive side and tell these stories. And here we are, we come to the NFL, and there's this incredible partnership, with your foundation, and you're doing incredible things for each of these kids. All it was really, hey, can we take the time to get to know these kids better, right, tell their stories, and then once we bring them in, let's give something back to them, right? In addition to the scholarships, let's bring them in and give them this incredible Super Bowl experience, right? You're going to come to Super Bowl. Why not experience what Super Bowl is all about and come to honors and see what it means to honor and to be among the best of the NFL, and come and be mentored by some of the very best, and really see what your future truly could be like, so that when you get this scholarship in your hand and now you have the opportunity to go to college and do something with your life, you have a little bit of a vision as to where you could go, right? And what you could be. And I think adding that bit of inspiration, I think, made a ton of difference to the students. It made a huge difference to the foundation in terms of just elevating the impact of what you guys do. And I think for us at the league, it elevates like our purpose, right? We uplift through the power of football. This isn't just about playing the game and winning and going to Super Bowls. There's all the excitement and the joy of that, but we transcend football, right? We unify, we build. And I think this program is all of that. It's like the epitome of what the league stands for. And so that's why I thought it's just this perfect marriage. Let's enhance it, make it better. And by the way, it just keeps getting better every year, right? So I can't wait to see the new students come in and their new stories and tell those stories and uplift those stories and make more connections. So you can tell by my energy and my passion that it has so much runway, which is the magic, right? That I saw when I came in, and that we continue to add to it.
Yeah, but it's a reflection of you. So you can try to say we had so much impact on this. No, I remember Javier sitting us down and saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it this year. Marissa wants to make sure that beyond everything that you just talked about, that they had career paths potentially in the industry. If they're already this passionate about sports, you can actually have a career path in it like Marissa. On the business side, you also talked about social capital to make sure they're connected with each other. And I remember you saying,
very important.
I'm just telling everybody that you're not giving yourself enough credit, because you wanted all of these elements in place, and every year you added something else to it, where now we're going to be part of the honors, and the partnership has grown in terms of the support that the students can get. So bravo to you.
Well, thank you.
I'm giving you some flowers right now. And but also, like, I just love that from the start. I remember our first meeting, you were like, I don't want to just focus on Latinos getting involved in football, not just as fans, not just as athletes, but on the business side, like you know, so we have that representation. So we have the Flores ad. So we have the scholars program and all these other things that we're doing. That doesn't happen if you're not in this position. So can you talk about the importance of that representation at these companies, whether it's PepsiCo, whether it's here at the NFL?
Yeah, you know what? We always talk about this, and it's critically important, right? You have to have the representation because you need to have the insight and the understanding, right? Without that representation, you truly don't get a perspective of what this community feels like, or what this community needs, or how best to motivate and engage the community. So representation is key. But I will say, I never stop at that, because I don't think representation is enough. Mm-hmm. I would not have been successful, and I wouldn't be successful now if it wasn't for critical allies and critical support. I mean, when I came into the league, you know, it was Tim Ellis, who is the global CMO of the league, who embraced me, who gave me the ropes to go do. He's like, here's what we need to do. I get your vision. Let's go do it. And what can I do to help you, right? If it wasn't for Roger Goodell, quite frankly, being open to, hey, for Super Bowl, which is our biggest tentpole event, we're not going to tell a story about traditional football. We're actually going to tell a story about women. And by the way, it's going to be a Latina woman. And by the way, it's going to be in Spanish. If Roger Goodell hadn't been open to that and supportive of that, it would have never have happened, right? So yes, you need the representation and you need the ideas and the passion, but you have to have the allyship and you have to have that support. Without it, representation goes nowhere, right? And I always like to talk about that second part because we as Latinos focus so much on the first part, right? Representation. Yes, but the second part, allyship, sponsorship, championship, support, like that is so, so critical. And that's above and beyond our community, right? That is all the other communities that have to embrace us and collaborate with us and all that. That's just as important. So that's why I emphasize it, because it's critical.
Understood. But they're going to see the value in what you brought. So
absolutely.
You brought them a value proposition to expand their network. Who better than, we want to go international. You're from Mexico. You want to have more women. You're a woman. You want to expand into different audiences.
Of course, yes.
So, and you come from PepsiCo. You built a career that they weren't just being nice. They believe in you because you gave them someone to believe in.
You're right, and it goes back to the business building vision, right?
Yeah.
We weren't doing all these things to be cool or nice. We were doing these things to ensure our relevance in the future, right? And ultimately, that currency that we are, to continue to grow that currency and be the global platform that we want to be. So yes, it all ties back to
I'm just saying,
growth in the business. Yes, for sure.
They believe in Marissa Solis, and they want to support you because they believe in you. But it starts with them believing you. You didn't get lucky and get in this job.
I did not get lucky. That is 100% true.
So let's talk about that path you took to put yourself in a position, because this is the exciting part for me. And shout out Ambrose, who gave me all this great information. So you moved from Mexico to the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, which is such a special, magical place.
Shout out to Harlingen, Texas.
Let's
Harlingen. Yes. I grew up in Harlingen, Texas.
With your mom and your sister when you were 10, right?
Yes. We were in Mexico City, and there were several circumstances that forced the move. I lost my dad when I was very young. My mom moved to the States, remarried an incredible man, and they together made a new life in the States. They own restaurants in the Rio Grande Valley. And over the years, they had several iterations of that. I mean, if you're in the restaurant business, you'll know it's just, it's up and down, right? And it's starts and stops. And we went through a lot of bankruptcies and just a lot. And growing up, when you go through that, you learn a lot. And my parents are amazing. They have an incredible work ethic. I mean, my dad always tells me, it doesn't matter what job you're doing. You could be washing dishes in the back or mopping floors, or you can be hosting, the guests as they come in. Every job is critical to the success of the restaurant, every single job. And you got to put 110% into what you do, and you got to do it with pride. And when people see that, they get inspired. And, that's why people come to the restaurant, because they see everybody working and doing their part. And I think that just stayed with me because I see it. And as throughout my whole life and career, it's always been about, giving your 110% and being part of this team where every person on the team knows the goal and contributes to that goal and really inspires, people around them to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? So that's a little bit of my whole career, whether it was at PepsiCo or now the NFL. It is about moving and shaping something that's bigger than yourself.
And that resilience is part of it too, as entrepreneurs, that you also understand.
Absolutely.
So when I interview people, I always ask, do you have any experience working at restaurants or in retail? I think it is the greatest asset you could have in your career. So I
Yes.
love what you just said so much. And I talk about it all the time. But in those, and it translates into everything else you do. It's customer
Everything.
service.
I mean, one of my biggest mentors in life that I absolutely adore always talked about being a servant leader. Al Carey, I don't know if you've heard that name. Al Carey, he was the CEO of PepsiCo, North America, and servant leadership, right? It is all about servicing the front line. You as the leader, your job is to service the front line, whether that's your salespeople, the people who are washing the dishes and mopping the floors, because they're the ones that make your business, right? And your job as a leader is to empower them, to remove obstacles for them, to make sure they have everything they need to succeed in their jobs. Because if they succeed in their jobs, the whole enterprise succeeds, right? And that stuck with me from the restaurant through all my years at PepsiCo and even now at the league, right? It's really me being in service of my team and letting them, empowering them to do great things. And that's how you get innovation and creativity and inspiration and all these new ideas, right, that come.
Absolutely. And Al was on the advisory board to the University of Maryland Business School with me. So I knew him a little bit through
One of the
that.
greatest people in the world, Al Carey.
He is that guy. He is that guy.
He is that guy, yes.
So after high school, you get a full ride to study foreign service, development economics, and international development at Georgetown University here in my hometown of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that was my dream, was to be an ambassador because, I grew up in the border area. So I grew up in the immigration crisis, and all I wanted to do was go be an ambassador and, go back to Latin America and foster relationships and create world peace and all that. That was my aspiration as a young person, and DC afforded me all that. I was in the best of the best schools of foreign service. I had the opportunity to intern in Congress with my congressman, Salomon Ortiz.
Good guy.
Yeah. And so those were the days of NAFTA. They were drafting NAFTA when I was, that's how old I am. They were drafting NAFTA when I was in DC, and it was just such a great experience to, be in the halls of Congress and kind of get a little bit of a sense of how things worked. And it was great. I loved every year that I was in DC at Georgetown. It was awesome.
But you're carrying on that dream of being an ambassador. I mean, you truly are an ambassador through everything you're doing internationally, just everywhere. So, Marissa, you reached all those goals, I think, even though
it's a bit of a full circle, right? It's a bit of a full circle. Yeah.
Except you're a Cowboys fan and not the surging Washington fan of our Commanders. That even though we lost a couple.
I work for the NFL, so it's all 32 teams are special to me, all of them.
Especially this one. But
congratulations, though, to the Washington Commanders, because they're having a phenomenal season, and you have a phenomenal rookie quarterback, and we're all keeping our eyes on him, and so it's exciting. It's fun.
It is exciting. But also, I'm interested in someone that has a background in working in communications and marketing. I worked at Nike. I worked at agencies like Gerson Marsteller and Conan Wolf and others before coming to the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. And I also have a daughter at San Diego State University that I hope is going to pay attention to this, even though she doesn't listen to my podcast, but I'm going to make her because you're on it. She's a sophomore there, and she's studying marketing communications too. So I can just imagine what it was like to navigate the corporate world in those early days. And I remember a story where you were actually running a campaign and you were asked to get coffee, which is just
Yes.
flying for my entire gender.
I remember that day, every day.
How have you navigated these preconceived notions in corporate America, especially while working for a brand at the NFL, that have been traditionally associated with a fan base and a structure that looks very different than you, although you're changing that?
I was very lucky, Antonio, that story that you heard happened to me very, very early in my career. I mean, I think I was 22 years old. It was my very first job, right? And here I am in Procter & Gamble walking into this agency meeting, and, I'm told to go get coffee with the assistant while the men talk business. And it was one of those moments where nobody spoke up for me. Not my boss, not the people that were in the room. And it was one of those times where I was probably the most scared in my entire life. And I had my whole life flash before me, and all I could see were my parents, honestly. In that moment, I saw my parents, and I'm like, I have to speak up for myself. I have to, like no one else will. And that's what happened. I said, you know what? I'm running the campaign. I think I have to stay in the room. And it was super awkward. And all those meetings subsequent after that were awkward. Like it's not like it was like, wow, this whole thing happened. No, it was very awkward. But I think over the course of time, people got used to the fact that I wasn't going anywhere. I mean, I was going to stay and I was going to do my thing. And I think that gave me a lot of courage very early on. So I was just lucky it happened early, because that little courage over the years turned into confidence in who I am. And, it didn't matter what room I'm in or who was around it. If I had something to say, or if I believed in something, I was going to say it or do it. Right. And I think, again, that's part of what, it was a blessing in disguise, and it's really served me well. And that's why I say I think about that moment every day almost of my career, because it gives me that little bit of that boost of confidence of, gosh, if I could do it when I was 22, I can definitely do it now, when I'm older and wiser.
That, more than anything of this entire episode, is the most important part out of everything, out of your entire career path, that at that age that you are able to stand up for yourself and be a voice and say, I'm in this room, you're going to feel my presence. I just can't even tell you how important that is, because we get a lot of young people that deal with imposter syndrome, and not just young people that are more experienced as well. And I always sometimes I feel, how did I get here? But if I'm in a room, if you invited me,
Yeah.
I'm coming in loud, and with my perspective and with my ideas.
Yeah.
So
no,
I
and I tell a lot of people that inner voice is very important. I think imposter syndrome is real, right? I have it. I get it all the time. You walk into a room full of NFL owners, you're going to get imposter syndrome. And like, what am I doing here? Why? But I think really listening to that inner voice and training it to be your biggest cheerleader is the most important thing. I have a daughter that's a sophomore at SMU, and I tell her the same thing. I'm like, you're your biggest cheerleader. And when that little voice inside your head starts going, oh, you can't do this, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the expertise, you're too young, you're too this, that's when you shut that off and you're like, girl, you are strong, you're a badass. I tell myself I'm a badass all the time. It's so funny. It's part of my morning meditation rituals. I have a badass ritual. I have a gratitude ritual, which goes first and foremost, gratitude. But my second ritual is badassness. Like, I tell myself every day what a badass I am and how I'm going to go out into the world and conquer the day. And then, you set your intention. And it sounds super hokey, but it's not. Like, it really does give you, that inner voice is so powerful. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's negative, right? It's the voice that tells you you can't, or gives you all the different excuses for not doing something, you got to turn that voice on its head and make it super, super positive, right?
And what's more badass than being a third degree black belt? How much does that help as well? And also just being catering to different customers when you were working at the restaurant, and that was your parents' restaurant, and seeing how they lifted this. I mean, that resilience, and that part is just so important for my daughter and so many young Latinas and females to hear, that you actually have that ritual where you talk yourself through these moments. And all of those owners, when you walk into that room, you are providing a value proposition, just like with your mentors that believe in you. There's a reason you're in that room, is what I'm saying, Marissa Solis.
Yeah. And you absolutely have to know that, right? I mean, Antonio, the very first time, it was, I think, my second day on the job at the NFL, and Roger has a meeting every Thursday with all of his leadership staff in the NFL boardroom. And I don't know if you've been there, but it's this incredible boardroom, and it's got this massive table. It's like this titanium table. And in the middle, there's this beautiful, like, titanium logo of the NFL. It's like the most incredible thing. And I remember the second day I walk in, and it's like the room full of all the NFL leaders. And then, Roger walks in and he sits down, and I'm just like taking it all in. And I text my husband, "You are not going to believe, like, the room I'm in right now. You're not going to believe this." And I mean, a little bit of it was just awe for me. And again, it goes back to that ritual. The first thing was just gratitude. Like, God, I'm so blessed and thankful to be in this room. And yes, I earned it and deserved it and all that. So I know people are always like, "Why are you grateful? You deserve it." No, I'm grateful. Even though I deserve it, I am grateful and I am blessed. So that was the first thought. And the second thought was, I'm such a badass. I am in this room. So it works. And, you mentioned my Taekwondo absolutely helped. I mean, that training was so great because it just taught you to be confident. There were so many things that I was afraid to do physically, like, not mentally. I think I'm a very strong mental person, but physically, I'm tiny and I'm not strong. And there were so many things that, our teacher would say, "Okay, you have to go and leap into this thing, or, take this thing down." And I would be like, I can't. And he'd be like, "You absolutely can." And once you do it, it's like, oh my God, I'm so powerful. I can do anything. So I think Taekwondo did help as well, in terms of that, that mentality of like, I am powerful and I can do it, and all of those things.
We're looking at these ingredients to your model right now, Marissa, and you're giving a lot of guidance right now. But I also know a bunch of other badasses that you are friends with. So I just have to shout out. I call them the Dallastinos, because they're, my kids would always say, our friend group. I know your friend group. So I'm going to shout out Lily, Nina, Ruth, Claudia, Marianne, Marie, and Maria Teresa.
My hermanas.
Those are your hermanas. And I know them. And I've hung with them and with you. When I go to Dallas, they take me out, and I'm the only guy in the room, and I hear all the chismes.
And they are wonderful women.
The greatest. The great, and always helpful. So can you talk about that support system that provided you? I know them. So it's like they give you comfort, but they also keep you in check. And as you took on this huge task with the NFL, and you have millions of people coming at you, because I've also seen you in public, and you literally have millions of people coming up, asking you, talking to you, wanting to be in front of you. But these are your true friends that are the truth. Talk about the importance of having that friend group and this support system, whether it's your parents and your family, to these Dallastinas that I know so well.
I mean, the support system is everything, Antonio, everything. And the first thing I will say is you build it over time, right? It doesn't just come to you one day. You build it over time. So every relationship that you have matters. from the time you meet someone to how long you cultivate it, right? And for me, obviously, it starts with family. I mean, my parents, my close family is everything to me. I married my high school sweetheart. We've been married for 27 years. He is my best friend. He's my therapist. He's my pool boy. He's my chef. He's everything, right? And then you have these friends that I surround myself with, the Lilies of the world and the Claudias and, the Ruths and Maries. I mean, and they are all powerful ladies, very well established, but kind women who all believe in the same goal and the same thing. And it's incredible to have their support. And then I have a very broad network, right? Because I do believe in diversity of your network. Like, you've got your close-knit, tight group of people like my hermanas, but I have a very broad network of people that are very different than myself. So I have my close group that are very much like myself, but I have a group that's very different because I do value different perspectives. And when I'm in a bind, I'm going to go to the person that's the most opposite of me and ask that person what they think, because I really value the other side. And I think sometimes we get so myopic about the things we believe in and our side that we don't see and are open to other ideas. And that's probably why we're in the place we're in. I think we need to be a little bit more open to, other ideas and other possibilities, because you just never know, right? There's new doors to open and new things to explore. So that's why my network also includes people that are the most opposite for me in every sense of the word, right? Not just gender, ethnicity, age, but like beliefs and upbringing and all of these different things. Because I learned something from being friends with that wide group of people.
So that visionary person that you are, that vision is broad, and you're getting all those perspectives. That's really important. I value that you just mentioned that too, because sometimes we do get caught up in being in echo chambers or surrounding ourselves with people that are completely like-minded, which is good in some ways, but you do need to be challenged and to think about your approach to things from different perspectives. As we wrap up this conversation, you've always said that you're drawn to the roles and organizations where you can have the most impact. I mean, you've talked about that throughout this last hour. Do you have any advice for our listeners on how to make career choices that maximize their impact beyond the job? And you've been able to do that. What advice do you have?
Yeah, my first advice is seek the things that drive you. What gets you up in the morning? What excites you? What are you passionate about? And create your mission from that. Why are you in this world, right? Because we all exist to do something. And it's usually driven by that inner passion that we have. So seek that and figure that out. And then as you go in your career, it's about being very intentional and seeing beyond the job. Because sometimes you'll get a job description and, hey, okay, I'm going to be a marketing coordinator and my job is going to be to, I remember my first job was to basically report out the numbers of sales, right? And do all these little dashboard reports. Fine, that's your job, but how do you then create that job and make it into something else, Don't just do what the description says. What else can you add? What else can you bring to that and leave that job better, than you left it? And be super intentional, seek out people that have the same values as you, and then go pick their brain and see, how can I help? How can I get involved in what you're doing? And ultimately, you'll see your trajectory moving in the direction that you want if you have that intention and that vision. I mean, I think the last 4 jobs I had at PepsiCo hadn't been created. They weren't jobs that existed before, right? They were jobs that were created because of what I wanted to do and, the ideas that I had for where we could take the company and things we could do. So I don't think that you should be limited by what's out there today. Be driven by your passion and motivation, and then create it. You do have the power to create your future. You absolutely do.
And that advice is more resonant because it's coming from you. And the NFL is going to benefit from exactly that. You're never going to look at a job just as a job. It's going to be, what impact can I have beyond it? How can I leverage this job to make a greater impact on everything surrounding it? And you've done that with our relationship. I'm so grateful to you. I'm grateful to the NFL because I told this story before, but when I was a kid coming over here from Nicaragua in Washington, D.C., the way I felt American was through American football. And it was the Washington team at that time. And throughout the years, whether it was lunch boxes, whether it was jerseys, whether my mom was wearing a Hogs t-shirt, whether my dad couldn't speak any English, but he learned how to say Sonny Jurgensen, I just can't tell you how much it meant to me to have that team to make me feel American. And so the NFL and the Washington team plays such a huge role for me, not just as a fan, but culturally in my experience of being an immigrant to the United States. So
that is amazing. I have to tell your story, Antonio. That is the story of fandom and the league and everything we're trying to do. So
that's my story. But we're here to talk.
Stay tuned. We're going to tell Antonio's story. I love it.
No, we're here telling your story. And we always wind up the Fritanga podcast with, we believe culture comforts. And one of our goals is not just to inspire action, but also to create a space for that comfort and connection through shared experiences, through culture. And we need that even more than ever. And you alluded to that. So tell us a song, a meal, a smell, a piece of literature, whatever it might be that brings you comfort. So let's start with a song like that your abuelita might have been singing, or your mom, or someone might have, that you and the ladies that we just talked about are dancing to in a club somewhere. But what are those songs that bring you comfort?
So I don't remember the singer, but oh my God, you know that song, Toda la vida. Do you know that song? It's an older song, but it comes on and I get very excited. I'm trying to think who the singer of that is. But you know what? Any old school Latino song, think of Mark Anthony salsa, or I love my Latino music. So any kind of, old school Latino song I love. So that's the song.
Awesome. Now the food part, I'm very interested, especially knowing that your parents own restaurants. So what is the food? And sometimes it's the smell of food. Or for me, it was the smell of Fabuloso, the purple kind. It just brought me comfort.
Oh my God.
So what are the foods or smells that bring you comfort?
My parents own seafood restaurants. My dad is an incredible chef. He has this special spaghetti actually that he makes for Christmas. It's like this, it's got it's pink almost because it's got the cream that he uses. Esquites also. He does these incredible esquites, and I used to eat these esquites on the streets in Mexico City. And I remember having one recently in New York in a place called Frida's, which is excellent. And I literally cried because it brought me back to the street corner in Mexico eating these esquites. So, and my dad makes them deliciously. So anything with cream and crema y queso and street tacos with cream, all those things I love. So a lot of Latin flavors. I love Peruvian food, which is interesting because I'm Mexican, but but I love Puerto Rican food. Any kind of Latin food, because it does take me to places and times in my life where I was there. So my first job, I worked in San Juan for Procter & Gamble. So anytime I eat mofongo or tostones or arroz con gandules, I remember that time, right? Or just, my esquites, that's my time in Mexico. So they're just different places in time that food takes me back to that I love.
And that's why culture comforts. Marissa, thank you so much for being on the Fritanga podcast. Thank you for sharing your perspective, for inspiring us to be able to have more impact in everything we do. You're the best.